Coffee time, bitches. So I worked on my EP yesterday, the mastering, and it's turning out pretty good. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I already spent so much time mixing and producing it. I really don't think that it needs that much work. So what I want to do today is take you guys through some of the decisions I made. I want to see if I can get a screen cap sneak peek today. All right, guys. Well, hopefully this isn't too awkward. I'm gonna try to hold my phone as I walk you through my mastering here. Luckily, my neighbors just stopped with their dishwasher upstairs, so the drone won't be as bad. I've got some audio software. It's Melda Recorder, so hopefully it's capturing the computer audio, and hopefully I can just sync it all up in post. So let's get a little quick sync here for myself. I have started mastering my EP. I think this is going to be just how it's going to be, because I think it sounds fine. I just checked, some Led Zeppelin and whatever just to listen to it, reference, but I've got 3 songs on this EP: Poetry Without Words, Light Bulb, and Keep Your Head Up High. So if you look through my history here, first I imported the audio and set up the plugins. I can show you my mastering chain. Then I did tops and tails and sequencing. I'll show you that if you don't know what that is. Some basic EQ, some multi-bend, and then I made sure that it was reading at the correct level. So obviously you guys should know how to import audio into Ableton. I was going to start with Light Bulb, this song here, which I'll play a few seconds for you while you can hear it. I walked along the street tonight. But I've been playing that song since I was about 22 or something, and people always like it. But I always played it with that, like an acoustic guitar, and I played it in an old country style. And I just had been playing it for so long, I wanted to do something different. So I decided I would make a rock version of it, and that's what we got. But it's a little too much me, I think. I know that my personality can be somewhat tough to digest sometimes. So I thought I'd start with a little bit lighter song, and that is this Poetry Without Words. And that one I wrote when I was living in Redondo Beach. We're in Torrance now. We're probably going back to Redondo or close thereby. And then this one here, Keep Your Head Up High, I wrote when I finished my Berkeley online. You can probably see the certificate right there. And it's because it almost killed me, man. You might think, oh man, online class was not that hard. Yeah, but it was, because I did the whole 3-year program in 18 months. Because that's all the GI Bill I had. So either I just sink or swim, So it was a lot of work. I was really isolated at the time, and I just felt like fucking dying, to be honest. So I wrote this one. I've already released it, but this is a new mix, a new version. So that's the sequence, okay? And that one, I don't know, I didn't expect that one to turn out as good as it did. But you don't want to open up your shit like that unless you're some kind of goth or industrial band, which, to be honest, I don't even know what the fuck Hexspa is, but it's not that, most likely. So once that was imported, I decided then what you'll do. Oh yeah, instantiated the plugin chain. So I'm doing a different plugin chain for each one of these, and I was careful with my routing to make sure that, I have nothing significant on my master bus. Right now I'm just recording this. I've got a project time, a little Ice 9 thing that'll like cut the audio if it gets too loud, which is important, and I'll tell you why in a second. And then this, just for turning the volume up and down, just to check things. Normally you don't want really any of this stuff on your master bus if you're mastering. And you can always master all 3 tracks through one chain. This is my mix bus chain is off, but this is a legitimate way to do it too. You don't have this luxury with hardware, I guess, but this way I have a whole separate set of tools for each track instead of trying to do automation or whatever. So I can just set it up. This is the way I've always done it. This is the way I like to do it. So that's the way I'm going to keep doing it until I figure out a better way. So after the plugins are instantiated, and by the way, I'm using the Waves linear EQ low band, the linear EQ broadband, the linear multiband, and the L2 with just a loudness analyzer on the end, just to make sure that I'm that I'm hitting K14 with -1 decibel true peak. I know not everybody does that. I looked at deadmau5's masters for random album title, and he's mastering something like K11 or K12. But exactly K11 or K12. He does, all his tracks were exactly that, not 1/10 of a decibel over. He did have a lot of intersample peaking, or true peak, true peak, higher true than 0 dB true peaks. But maybe he knows what he's doing. This is only my second EP that I'm mastering, so I don't want to fuck with it too much. So what we have is K14. We'll go through all the settings right now, but first I want to show you the tops and tails. Basically what you do is you sequence, which means you decide the order of your stuff, and then you come over here and do a little fade. And the fade is small. I left a little lead in time when I bounced the mix. And if you check it out down here, I have about 100 milliseconds of lead in time from the point where the track starts to where we get the first transient. That's about right. I actually went through a few tracks and looked what the actual lead-in times were, and it's 100 milliseconds is a good rule of thumb. You don't want to hit it right there on the end for whatever reason. No one does that, so I'm not going to do it. And then same thing over here. We come up with a tail, so we just listen. And that I had to cut that short because either this one or the other one, I actually had pops and stuff, and I didn't want to bounce it again. I used to train at a jiu-jitsu school. I won't name it, but one of the instructors there said the difference between him and then everybody else who trains or maybe brown belts was that he considers his jiu-jitsu game like a ratchet. And what he meant by that was every step forward he takes, he doesn't go back. Of course, he's not probably the best jiu-jitsu person in the world, but that was his mindset. Once he passes the guard, he's not going back into the guard. Once he achieves mount or starts to work for a submission, he doesn't go for that submission. Whereas if you notice a lot of lower belts, they try something, they fail, it doesn't work, oh, well, fuck it, I'm guilty of that too. So I've been playing music for a lot longer, so I wanted to apply that same philosophy. And once I finish something, once I already signed off on it, just move forward. And if something's not perfect, well, I'll correct that in the next step, but I'm not going to keep going back. I can go on about this. There's a lot of examples, but I'm sure you can find some in your own life. So there's my fade, and then I felt that from here into this next transient was good timing. All right, and I got my fades right there too. Little fade, a little lead in, and then same thing down here. So from the end of this one, just like you would get on a CD, which no one listens to anymore, which is also part of the reason that I'm probably not going to be doing EPs that much anymore. But anyway, we did tops and tails, we instantiated the plugins, we did some basic EQ, and I'll go over that right now. So this is turning out to be pretty fucking long. So basically what I did was I set the loudest markers for the loudest parts of the song. Now they're all different tempos, so it's rough, and then I also set markers for the quietest part of the song. You can see here. These were just leftover markers. This was my mix template and I just modified it. But I've got loudest part of the song here. And then I've got the loudest part of the song here. And then I've got the loudest part of the song here. Keep your feet on the ground when you look correct. Okay, so that way, the first thing I did was I went in and set my limiter. Just basically, nothing too strict. It wasn't this setting. This is the current setting, but I just made a basic setup to get it to about K14, which over here you can see I have the M loudness analyzer. set to K14. This limit should actually be 3, but that's more useful for mixing when you're setting your dynamics and stuff. It doesn't really matter right now. And you can use either one of these scales for mastering. Most of these are mix tools or maybe for film, but you know, as long as I know that I'm at K14. So yeah, I basically set my L2, and then I didn't use the multiband just yet. So I just listened to the loud part of the mix, because just like when you're mixing, you start with the loudest, or when you're writing a song, you maybe work with the chorus first. You begin with the end, more or less. So I listened. Let me see if I turn all this shit off. So let's turn it off. So this is what I started with. They don't need that. You know, but your ear hears different things when it's louder, quieter, and especially mastering, they say you should more than ever really leave it at the same volume. So I turn my limiter on and see, now I'm not really getting a lot out of it because I'm getting most of my loudness out of the multiband. But whatever. So I don't want to turn the multiband on. So I went through. I generally start with the low. So I did my high pass at 35 hertz. I took out about a dB.5 at 47 hertz with about a medium Q. And I decided that I wouldn't do a boost at 82 hertz. And that sounds like this. Crazy enough, it actually makes the bass sound fatter. I don't know why. I think it has something to do with the ear, you know, responding more to the frequencies above a cutoff, you know, even if there's not a resonant bump there. So there you go. And then my broadband, all I really did was just take out 0.8 dB at 1.5 kilohertz, and then a tiny little boost at 4K. And so that gave us this. It's not much, and maybe I could do a little more, but once I added the multiband, which is a lot, is done. This is like really where I feel the whole mastering process takes place for me. I'm still learning this tool, but even with the limited knowledge I have, I feel it makes a huge difference, not only in the loudness, but in the overall evening effect of the dynamics, because it hits the lows, it hits the mids and the highs all differently, and it just makes things smoother. And to me, this is the processor that gives it the polish. So once you hear it with this, you know, and I decided that I like that better. I don't feel like stopping now. With pain to burn, I remain unheard, like poetry with a... I don't even think there's any difference between these two. No, I guess that one's the same, or it didn't save, regardless. So that's what I did with that one. And then, see, the important thing with mastering is not to make every track sound the best necessarily. The way I understand it is that you got to make the whole project sound like it belongs together. So that requires some compromises, and I feel that more or less these tracks do. So with the next one, same thing, same basic process. If I turn everything off, and again, the L2 is not doing as much now because I get more volume out of the linear multiband. But here's without on light bulb. We're obviously getting a little bit more there. And then with the low, I roll off 35 hertz and then about a dB and a half, 1.6 at 258. So here's that. So I cut it at 11 kilohertz, and then also at 562, an octave up from. A little bit more clarity, and then, you know, if you can hear the direct audio, the highs to me just were a little spitty, so it didn't require much. And then of course we got the linear multi. But so I cut it It does sound a little distorted. I don't necessarily mind that. A little bit of crispiness, I feel, helps give that polished sound. You might not want to multi-band your stuff that intensely, but I decided on those settings, listening to A, B, more or less, different attacks and different release settings on the compressors. Again, I'm still learning the tools, but I feel that it does the job and it makes the tracks sound like they belong together. So moving on quickly to the end here. Here's this last track. And I like the mixes. I didn't really feel like a lot needed to be done. But
keep your feet on the ground when you look around. Keep your head up, up high.
Took a lot of bass off this one, and you might like it better without all this EQ on it, but it doesn't match the rest of the tracks. I mean, listen, here we go.
Keep your feet on the ground when you look around. Keep your head up.
And then maybe to this one. See, this light bulb doesn't have the same kind of low end, and neither does the other one. So I can't have this mega fat bass. It just doesn't fit.
Keep your feet on the ground when you look around. Keep your head up.
You hear that? It's way too much. Here, little boost on the top, little cut at 6, little cut at 12.
Can't take it anymore.
And that was just more, I guess, more just to combat the low, because the low was so fat that a little bit of brightness kind of balanced that out some. So that one I guess has the most treatment, and then here the linear multiband. Again, I maybe will link to the video that I got my little tool from, but sorry, this one here.
Keep your feet on the ground when you look around. Keep your head up high.
Brings everything to the front, and there's still dynamics. So if I come over here to the low part,
then I hear your words, and I'm like a bird. So keep your head up high.
So I mean, I like how it turns out. So, and then if you go through and you listen to all these, it's not showing anything now because it's down. But if you run through them, I can probably just play it.
Keep your feet on the ground when you look around.
We're below 1 dB true peak. Obviously, I got to run through the whole track, but take my word for it. There, 0.09. Even though here's 1.4 underneath 0, this is the one you got to look out for, because if you do MP3 encoding or certain players will introduce distortion. So momentary loudness is like within a couple milliseconds. Short-term loudness is within a couple seconds. And then integrated is the whole thing taken from start to finish, the whole sample size, except when it's below a certain threshold, it deletes that. And then your range is pretty much, I think, like the range that your short-term loudness goes to. And it's better than 3.4. That matters maybe if you're limiting really hard. I'm obviously not. So I'm not too worried about it. The main thing I'm worried about was getting to an integrated level of 0 for K14, because look, if you move this up and down, it changes that. But we wanted at minus 14 LUFS, which is K14. And I guess the only thing I can say about that right now is that when you have iTunes or something, it has something called soundcheck. And everything above, or something that's mastered louder than about K16, it's going to turn it down. And if you have something quieter, it's going to turn it up. And I think it calibrates for the loudest song in the album and then turns everything down relative to that within each playlist or album. And it really does work. If in all this stuff comes out of when you watch TV and you hear about or you hear the commercials that are really loud. There's laws against that now. Not that anyone watches TV anymore, but even YouTube does it, I think, because I have mastered some of my videos, speech videos, to be really loud, to be like K14 level. But when you play them back, they don't sound any louder than anyone else's. You know, they sound a little smashed. And that's what happens with this loudness normalization kind of stuff that's happening. It's, you know, some people say it's the end of the loudness war. It's not. There's, you know, we're always going to have people smashing things, and there is going to always be a certain advantage to that if people aren't using these sound check like technologies. But I think YouTube is, because they say that people can handle shitty video quality over shitty audio quality. So YouTube, they want you to stay there forever. So they're not going to let you, you know, they're not going to leave it up to you to get it right. So I'm pretty sure that they're using loudness matching that's similar to what iTunes is using at around K16. So that means I've mastered slightly louder. Well, I didn't feel like going with K16. I wanted to go to K14. That's what Bobcat's always recommended. He might be recommending, I think, K16 now. I don't really care. I'm happy with the way the project turned out. I'm going to be uploading it soon. You can judge for yourself. But really, I just wanted to share with you guys my mastering process more than anything. This has been a project that's taken me... I mean, I wrote Lightbulb when I was 22. And, you know, for Teresa, it's part of the same EP. I wrote that when I was 18, the bridge. I just didn't know how to use a 3-line stanza within the context of music, because it's different than 4 lines. Try it out, write a 3-line stanza, and you'll feel awkward about it. And that's what it's supposed to do. But I didn't know how to make use of that. So it took me until a couple years ago, you know, and then I had to go to school to fucking figure out how to make music on the damn computer without it sounding totally small and shit. So I feel like I've come a long way. I'm, you know, so I hope you guys like it, but ultimately I'm very proud of the project. This was never meant to be something that I was competitive about, like, oh, I'm going to compete with Justin Bieber, who I don't even think was a thing by the time I started this project. I don't even think he wasn't born when I wrote Teresa, for sure, so maybe he was actually. But it's done now, and this apartment that you see, we're leaving it. So it's a big wrapped up kind of time. Everything's kind of changing, but I finished the damn EP. I'm very proud of it. Hopefully you guys like it. And I think that's the end of this vlog for today. All right, bye.